Hello. How are you? I'm good. How are you? I leave tomorrow. I go to Scottsdale. I love it. I walked right into that one. That was good. That was good. Our son's getting married. Oh, I should go to college. Oh. I go to Scottsdale. Good. Well, let's get away. Wait on the rat race? Yeah, you know. Oh my God.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Personnel Committee of May 4th to order. And the first order of business is the election of a chairperson. Are there any nominations?
Madam, I would like to nominate Ed Wagner for chairperson of the Finance Committee.
Okay, there's a nomination for Alderperson Wagner. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? I declare the nominations closed, and I'll look for a motion to elect Alderperson Wagner as chairperson. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Motion by Handler.
Second.
Second by Witzel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Well, thank you, folks. Next up on the agenda is the election of a vice chair. And right now I will open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate Rebecca Spiros for vice chair.
Alderperson Spiros has been nominated for vice chairs, or are there any other nominations? If not, I'll declare nominations closed, and I will look for a motion to confirm Ms. Spiros says. Motion by Wetzel, who did it before I could get it out of my mouth, and second by Handler. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, I just lost my agenda here. Have you been? Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, next up is to identify potential conflicts of interest. You've seen the packet. Has anybody in there identified anything that they might have a conflict of interest with? If not, we'll move on. Citizen comments. Citizen comments twice. Citizen comments 3 times. There being none, we'll move on to consent agenda, the minutes of the April 20th, 21 meeting, and bills and payroll. What are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Paschal, second by Spiros to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Item 8, review compensation consultant report on accounting manager position. Let's see, this will be Jen, right? Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. So as you might recall, the accounting manager was brought before this group on April 6th to be reviewed. That was approved, and the job description then went to McGrath for a compensation evaluation. We did receive a response from them. You may recall that the job was currently placed in pay grade 133, but as we looked at the job description with the upcoming turnover, we were able to identify that there were some process efficiencies based on some new software that's coming in, where the position is going to be refocused on performing some financial analysis and other higher level financial functions rather than some of the duties that it was previously responsible for. The big change in the job description before you is the fact that in the past, while this position has always required a bachelor's degree, there was a CPA requirement as well. What we would like to do is change that CPA requirement from required to preferred. If you look at the information in your memo, we did find with the compensation consultant that the position itself has been more difficult to recruit lately, and part of that is based on a CPA requirement. Even without a CPA requirement, it has been somewhat difficult. So in looking at the job and the recommendation for McGrath, they recommended that it is placed in pay grade 134 for both recruitment and retention purposes. And they thought that with the increased level of experience that we recently changed from 2 to 3 years to 5 to 7 years, that we would be able to find appropriate candidates in that pay range. So in summary, the recommendation is to move the position from pay grade 133 to pay grade 134, and then to change the designation within the job description for the CPA from required to preferred. So with that, we're happy to take any questions. Otherwise, staff is seeking approval of the revised job description that was passed out at the beginning of the meeting, and to place the accounting manager in pay grade 134 in order for us to begin the recruitment process for this position.
Okay, Rebecca? Go ahead.
Okay, the only thing I have a little bit of an issue here is it, you know, we want to pay the person more, but we've downgraded the requirements. That seems odd to me. That seems backward, actually. I mean, I think that we would be listening to the other, you know, side of it, where we used to just suggest, prefer it, and now we're going to require it. Now we're going to bump them up a pay scale. That seems to be more sensible to me than to say, we're going to bump them up in the pay scale, but we're going to actually just require less.
We are going to require less with the CPA, moving that from a preferred status. Obviously, we'd still look for those CPA candidates if they are available. However, when we reviewed this job description, we did increase the experience level from 2 to 3 years to 5 to 7 years. So that is one piece of accounting for that scenario.
And their bachelor's degree is in what?
Go ahead.
A couple, just to tag on to what Jen said, is what I handed out when it got changed to a, instead of a required CPA, I broadened a couple of certifications that would also qualify. And we put the bachelor's degree in finance, accounting, business administration, or something closely related.
If I can.
Go ahead, continue.
Okay, so you're requiring certifications in all of these things listed?
No, those are preferred. So it was required. McGrath said change it to preferred. So when they told me that, I broadened the list of qualifications that would be looking for besides CPA.
So I'm looking at, is this not the correct document? So I'm looking at this document and it says that the following licensure certificates, registration, et cetera, are required for this position. Is that supposed to say are preferred? Or am I looking at the wrong document?
You're looking at the correct one. I think that's just some wording. If you read the actual list of certification, it ends with preferred. So if that's a clarification we need to make.
Okay, there at the end, I see
Yep.
that. Yes, okay. And so is the 5 to 7 years experience you're requiring, is that in municipal accounting position, or is that just what type of experience are you looking for?
It's not. Actually, there's nobody on our staff right now that had governmental experience before coming here. So we're looking for just general broad-based experience, accounting and finance, but not necessarily governmental.
Mr. Wetzel?
Thank you. To piggyback off the question, I too am a little surprised at the reduction of requirement and the increase of pay. And I understand that the rationale there is additional experience counts for the certification. But correct me if I'm wrong, do we not have situations, I think perhaps in the speed department, where a certain level of licensure is required, and until they reach that, they're at a lower pay scale, but once they reach that, then they get bumped up? And is that something that we could look at here where, you know, if we're bringing in a CPA, they're at the 134, but if they're not CPA, or at the 133, with the option that if they get the CPA, they bump up based on that additional certification.
You are right, we do have that in our wastewater department, so they do have the certification and they're at a wastewater operator level 1 until the certification, and then once they're certified, which requires 3 years and a number of courses that they take, then they move into the certified scenario and automatically increase, but that's certainly something that we can look at. We could still advertise at a pay grade 133, but then create the second level.
Because I think if you advertise, it says, you know, we strongly prefer this, and if it's so, you're going to be at the 134, and if it isn't, then you're at the 133 until you reach that. I think that would make sense to me as a way to handle this. Nothing further.
Are you responding? I didn't.
Yeah, we can, I mean, I think we can look at that. What I would do is connect back with McGrath, just to verify that piece. I can't imagine that there'd be an issue with that, but we should be able to have an accounting manager and then a certified or a CPA accounting manager.
Could we handle this with, in sort of teeing off on what Mr. Wetzel was saying, could we handle this with the steps? In other words, could we hire somebody in at a higher step in the pay grade if they had some or all of these qualifications or certifications? Although I'll tell you something right now. I mean, it's we just went through this down at county, and it's not. You're not going to find anybody that has a lot of these certifications that are going to apply for a government accounting position. What I'm getting at is that, of course, how much do you feel McGrath depended upon the CPA certification for choosing this level? Would they have gone back to 133 without that level? Would it have been that, or without the requirement or the preference for the CPA?
Sure. So one of the things when I was talking to McGrath about the position, they indicated that there were 3 other communities within the state that they were working with on a similar type of position. And so with those positions, they had found with these communities that CPA was a hard sell in terms of finding qualified candidates with that CPA designation. And so that was their recommendation, to encourage us to consider the preferred piece versus a requirement for the CPA. In regard to the pay range or the market evaluation itself, you know, what she indicated is that that she has seen more communities go with the CPA preferred versus the requirement, just because of the recruiting issues that have come along with finding that person up front. So I think from that standpoint, you know, they didn't necessarily say that without the CPA requirement that we could recruit at a CPA. What she indicated was that with the 5 years of experience that we're looking for, she thought that would be a competitive range with the CPA preferred to potentially get someone with a CPA into that role, or to find a candidate that would have a strong skill set for the position.
The other question I have, it would be more for Ron. Ron, are any of your staff who are not, you're the only CPA on staff right now, isn't that correct?
I believe so, correct.
And are there any of the members of the staff who are working on their CPA, or are there continuing education requirements if you're not working on your CPA?
No. So if you don't have your CPA, you're not required to have any ongoing education that I know of.
And we don't have anybody else on the staff other than you?
We have an accountant, and I know she has a bachelor's. I'm trying to, and Jen might be looking at, well, Jen's looking that up. Just want to point out, there's the job requirements too, but what I'm asking this person to do will look quite a bit different than what the accounting manager is doing now. As you know, we're going through a software conversion. So what I really want this person to do is, you know, develop all the reports, the analysis, kind of the forward-looking type reports and analysis that will help us identify problems early instead of just kind of doing the work. So to me, that part of it is an important part for me, to get someone who can kind of lead the charge on those things.
Go ahead, please.
I'm not so concerned about the person being a certified public accountant. It's a account manager position, I would think that a certified management accountant would probably qualify, or one of the other licenses that is available in our
Those,
requirement.
those are, if I understand it, those are just certifications, they're not licenses, is that correct?
Correct. The CPA is a license through the state body. The other ones listed are a certification through the professional organization, either the IMA, the IIA, or I can't recall the third one.
Okay. Oh, good call. Anything else? Mr. Randler?
What credentials?
Could you turn on your mic, please?
Yep. Peter was asking what credentials our current accounting manager has.
No, the one that just left.
Correct. Well, she's actually here till the 14th.
Oh, okay.
So she's almost done. She had a bachelor's degree and a certified, and after she had been in the position for a while, she picked up a governmental accounting certification.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Duros?
So I would be more inclined to agree with Tom's suggestion that, that we advertise this, however you want to advertise it, but that, we continue on, pay grade 133, you know, unless the person does have, you know, more experience or the certification, and then we could bring them in at 134. And I think you can advertise it that way. I've seen a lot of jobs advertise a pay scale based on experience or certifications. I understand, Ron, your desire to have them help you with reports and things like that, but it feels like that once they're done and have those in place, then that's done. You know, that you built out the report, and then it's a matter of, you know, entering the information. And I get that, but I think that we should just base it on experience and see what we get.
Put the range in.
And that'll be my motion.
Okay, that's a motion. Okay, is there a second? A second by Mr. Wetzel. Discussion, Mr. Wetzel?
I think that that's a good plan. It also gives some level of incentive to whoever comes in, if they don't have that, to pick that up. And since some of these are through professional organizations rather than state certification, I think that it should be a fairly easy thing to work toward and a good incentive to get to that point rather than coasting on one's laurels.
Well, CPA is the gold standard. You can't just pick that up. That's a little more difficult to pursue, but I think some of these other things might very well fit in if that's what you're talking about. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Deb, you got the motion?
Yeah, we have a.
Yeah, we
Yes,
did.
I
Mr.
did.
Wetzel's seconded, yeah. Okay, would you read the motion if you can?
I don't have the exact words, but what they were saying is, kind of, the qualifications, they would either get pay grade 1, 2, 3, or
Yeah, and we'll let Deb, or not Deb, Jen, finesse the wording. Would that be fair enough to say? Okay. All right, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it is carried. Okay, next up, Ron, you're up. Recommended approval to refill the accounting manager position.
Correct. Now that we've established the ranges for it, Amy Van Wy's last day is March 14th, and we'd look for a motion to,
March 14th.
I'm sorry, May 14th,
Okay.
look for approval to post her position.
Motion by Wetzel, second by Spiros. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Request to recommend council approval of resolution number 2021-36. Or recommend approval of the council. We're going to ask them for their approval, right? Okay. Support of sufficient state aid to cover video service problems for providers, fee rate reduction presented by Steve Bark. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. This one may seem a little bit preemptive. That's not our intent, but there's been some discussion going on among some folks who watch this very carefully, the people who deal with community programming. and they have had a concern. Here's what happened, if you think back a little bit. For many, many years, the city was collecting a 5% fee from Charter Communications, as cable provider, that we could use for cable TV or other communications purposes. For us, that's meant in recent years, roughly $250,000 in revenue that we have used generally, again, toward cable TV related services. The state came along a couple of years ago and reduced that, and they cut it for 2019 from 5% to 4.5%, and then for the following year, for 2020, and for 2021, another 0.5% down to 4%. However, they made it very clear that they wanted to make an offset payment to make cities and villages whole. So if you think about it, for the city of Marshfield, we get $250,000 in 2019. Then in 2020, we get $225,000, but the state makes us whole for the other $25,000. And then for this year, we would get $200,000, but the state makes us whole for the other $50,000. So we continue to get the same amount of money we would have always gotten due to the state offset. Having said that, the state is right now talking about its budget for the next 2 years, starting on July 1st. And while I understand the governor has proposed continuing funding, it's unclear whether the legislature is going to support that. There's been some discussion as to whether the majority is in favor. And it's very premature at this point, but there's been some concern again by people who are involved in the cable TV and communications type services in municipalities about what happens if in fact they don't support it, and that the final budget does not include any additional money for the offset payment. So in other words, it appears it would at least include the money to make us whole at 4.5%, but it might not have enough money to make us whole at 4%. So in other words, the city could lose $25,000 in revenue yet this year, and that could be a problem going forward if the funding isn't there from the state. So again, like I said, it may seem a little bit premature, but we want to weigh in, as are many cities and villages across the state, about the importance of that fee, that offset payment from the state to provide services in communications related fields. And we just want to let everyone know in the legislature that we want to see that offset payment be full, as was first promised back in 2019. So staff requests approval of resolution 2021-36, asking the state to continue the video service provider fee at the amount necessary to make cities and villages whole.
Motion by Handler, second by Mr. Paschal. Discussion?
I have a question. Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Steve, if we shouldn't get the 25 or 50,000, whatever the case may be, how will that affect our communication efforts?
Well, it would be significant. You know, right now, our budget for the communications department, which includes the staff we have now, Tom and David, and all the expenses that they incur, is funded by the franchise fee. In this case, the franchise fee plus the supplemental money from the state, this video service provider offset fee. So if we drop from 250, let's say, to 225, that would cause us to look at possible reductions or funding from elsewhere to make up the difference in the budget. I think the budget's been relatively trim. I don't know what it is for this year. I know we've got a little bit of fudge room, but that does limit what we can do in that department.
Any further discussion? Mr. Paschal?
Yes, even though this is not something that's set in stone yet, I think it's important that we get ahead of it, because if it's a lot easier to let our opinion be known before a decision is made rather than after a decision is made, and then try to claw that money back from the state.
I would agree, if I could jump in for a second. Yeah, you know, again, I think that we may be a little ahead of ourselves, but this is the kind of thing that cities and villages across Wisconsin have always been concerned about. And it could be the prelude to the personal property tax elimination someday, where the state says in good faith, and I'm not saying anybody's misrepresenting, but that they'll make cities and villages whole for the money that they lose in personal property tax. And that sounds good, but as finances change in Madison, you know, will that hold over time? That's what concerns municipalities. So I think this is kind of a precursor to that, since they committed 2 years ago to making us whole, and we want to make sure that they stay with that. And again, that's why people are maybe getting ahead of the game right now. You know, we can find a way to fund the communications department. Our staff does a great job, and we want to continue that, but it would be a hit to lose $25,000 or $50,000 in future years. It really would.
Steve, has the league taken a position on this?
The league has not, and truthfully, what I get from Kurt Wojcinski, the assistant director of the league, is that they still aren't significantly concerned about this. You know, the thought is that the Republican majority in the legislature, by not apparently having proactively included this, may be wavering, but no one's actually heard anyone say that. And I think that the league believes that that money is going to ultimately be restored. It's just that those of us with the most at stake are a little bit nervous about even not seeing it in for sure right now.
Okay, can I suggest also that if the council passes this resolution, we make sure we transmit a copy to the league, let them know where we stand on this.
Yeah, I would suggest we send a copy to the league along with our 4 legislators that represent this area, just so they know. Again, you know, they may call us and say you guys are presupposing something, but we want it on record.
Right, and I agree with Mr. Paschal, we need to be proactive about this. I think we really do. Okay, next up, finance update, city's credit rating. Ron?
We need to vote.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, did I miss something?
We need to vote.
Oh, we have a motion in a second. Okay, I'm sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carries. Now, Ron, you're on. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to take a minute or two to talk about our Moody's credit rating. So we had the credit rating call with them last week. So we're at A1 negative outlook due to our previous issues. And they seem really receptive to our message that, you know, we've got a lot of good things going for us, and I'll kind of recap some of those. But it seemed like they really wanted the 2020 audit in hand before they'd really move us up or remove the negative outlook. So, and we won't have that for another month or so. So even though they held us where we are, they seemed really encouraged by where we're headed. So some of the things we related to them is that at the end of 2020, our debt service fund balance will be 0. Remember, it started at $1 million, $1.4 million in the hole and added to it. So we've cleaned that up. That's got a 0 balance. We changed our debt policy to say that that'll always be 0 or more positive. That was a good thing. Our TIF advances, so that's where the TIF should have borrowed money in the past, but it hasn't. So essentially the general fund is funding those amounts. At the end of 2019, that was about $3.6 million. At the end of 20, it's closer to $2 million. And so it's going away rapidly. We had some donor transfers. And just looking at TID 5, which will be the one remaining TID that has an advance from the general fund, and that's the Mill Creek Business Park with Prevention Genetics. In 2021, their budget is $900,000 in revenue and about $45,000 in debt. So they're just paying back extremely quickly, and that's adding to our fund balance extremely quickly. So then we mentioned that the levy going forward, we'll have our debt service covered. You know, we got some good grant money and those kind of things. So all our messages were really positive. They were just reluctant because they didn't have the audit in hand for final numbers to take any action. So they'll revisit that on our next debt issue. So I just wanted to kind of explain why we were held, you know, we got a lot of things, good things going for us, but they held us there for the moment. And take any questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Handler?
Yes, thank you. What is our rating at the present time?
It's A1 negative outlook. It was up 1, AA3 is the one above it.
Yeah.
They dropped us down and then dropped us to a negative outlook while we're working through our TID issues. So we're down essentially 1 rating and a half from where we started.
Okay, a follow-up question on that. When will we be back at the point that we once were?
As soon as possible.
Thank you.
It's, you know, once we have the 2020 audit in hand and we go back and we continue to make progress, it will push them really hard at a minimum to remove that negative outlook. But it's easy to go down, hard to go up. So, you know, we need to continue making progress, you know, be fiscally conservative, but I don't even want to put a timeline on it, but at least probably another year or two to get us back to AA3, which we likely didn't deserve to be there in the first place.
Right. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you. I would just like to take That'd be good. I'd like to take a moment again to thank you, Ed, the members of this committee, all the members of the council for the decisions you made in the last 2 years. Just maintaining that A1 rating with a negative outlook, it may sound like, oh, rats, we didn't move up. You have to kind of stop the bleeding before you can head the other direction. And honestly, they were very impressed. I was on the call with Ron. They were very pleased with the strides that we made, the tough decision to raise the taxes, some of the cost-cutting measures, some of the financial planning, Ron leading the charge, and Dave Ferris from Ellers. So it was a very positive conversation. And, I can see good things happening if we keep moving down this road.
Mr. Witzel.
And I guess I want to thank Ron for the work that's been put in the last few years. I know you come to us with not pleasant news, and I'm sure that you've probably felt some heat from some of that not pleasant news, but I really appreciate you taking what you inherited, learning as you went, taking whatever information was provided from whatever auditors or anybody else, putting together a clean picture, and then figuring out how we can start to move forward from where we were. So I really thank you for your hard work on this as well.
I agree. Thanks, Ron. And Ms. Spiros.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo that too. I think that it was a really rough year and we did have to make a lot of hard decisions. But I also wanted to say something to Ron. You came in here and you did a great job. You discovered things that weren't the greatest. But had you not found those, we wouldn't have been able to move on with those. And so I appreciate that very much.
Thank you all.
Any further, Mr. Hindler?
It's just on the lighter side of things, Ron. Would you have taken this job if you know that?
If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes, chapter 19.85, sub 1, sub C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Motion by Wetzel, second by Paschal to go into closed session. Roll call, please.
Wagner,
Yes.
Paschal,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Spiros, Endler.
Yes.
Okay.
I can end this. Yeah, okay.
You got it, Deb? Okay. In open session, and in that session, we discussed a request for an employee to have extended absence, and the floor is open for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Hendler, second by Wetzel. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, any items for the future agenda? You have any, Steve, or?
I have a couple that I'm going to bring forward. MAPS is asking for a couple changes. One, they need to update their contract with us for animal care, impounds, the fees and those kind of things. And also they want to talk to us about something we discussed a couple of years ago and didn't do, and that's reducing the hold for impounded animals from 7 days to 4 days, which is allowed by the state. But this body, a couple of years ago, said we weren't ready for that. So they want to take another run at that one. And then also I'm going to have the assessor here to give an update on the a possible decline in property values to some degree. He wants to share with us some things that are going on. And then we'll also talk about where to move forward with assessing services as well.
Okay, I'll add one more thing here too. We got a just short briefing on the redistricting and then the census day. And we will know, hopefully by next week, we'll know a little more about what the legislature in their divine wisdom is going to do. So, but I think we need to stay on top of that because they're talking about doing it in phases, and in the first, we will be left out of the first phase, and our 2021 municipal elections will not be affected, I think. But I'll have more information on that for you.
This is an update you've gotten at county?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? If not, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.